I do want to introduce my colleague, Representative Scribner, who is the ranking member of the Transportation Committee. And to be quite honest with you, it was his idea to have this forum in regards to getting people together to have a better understanding and a dialogue amongst towns in regards to tolls, electronic tolls that might be coming on borders of the towns, and to have an open discussion in regards to what are the pros and cons of having this. So I'd just like to introduce my colleague, State Representative Dave Scribner, and tell you a little bit about him, and then he can take over in regards to where we're going to go from here. But State Representative Dave Scribner, he's the Assistant Minority Leader in the Connecticut General Assembly, and was first elected into the special election in '99, and is currently serving his 6th term. Representative Scribner currently serves as a ranking member of the Legislative Transportation Committee, ranking member of the Transportation Bonding Committee, and member of the Finance Revenue Bonding Committee and the Public Health Committee. And I got to be quite honest with you. I am a Democrat. I am the chair of the Transportation Committee, as I said, and I could not ask for two better individuals that are right next to me, and that's Senator Boucher and Representative Scribner, who I've got to be quite honest with you, we have worked so well together, and his opinions mean a great deal to me. And I think you all should be very grateful to have a representative like David Scribner and Senator Boucher here. And they didn't force me to say that either, folks. In addition, Representative Scribner serves on the State Public Health Advisory Committee as an ex-officio member of the State Bond Commission and was appointed by Governor Rell as chairman of the state team to prevent underage drinking. Representative Scribner was appointed by the former Speaker of the House, James Engman, to the Nationwide Transportation Committee of the National Council of State Legislators. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce your state representative, David Scribner.
First, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming out here tonight. Thank you, Senator. The idea behind this was to provide an opportunity for members of the public in the Danbury region what kind of information the legislature has before it and what kind of facts we're looking at in regard to the potential of re-implementing tolls in the state of Connecticut. This is an issue that could potentially have impacts statewide. So we believe that rather than hold, we did have a subject matter public hearing earlier this month in the Transportation Committee. And interestingly enough, we did not have a significant number of people from the public attend that, but we also recognize that that's very difficult for many members of the public. So our idea was to bring it out to you and provide an opportunity with some of our knowledgeable people in regard to what may be considered in the future. And just so that you know, the Transportation Committee has ended its business for this session. We did not pass any legislation that is going to move tolls forward. What we have done is to request that the Department of Transportation do an evaluation. We've recently completed a very thorough study and gotten that information back, so we've asked the department to do that evaluation and bring their recommendations back to us by June of next year, which by that time next year, we won't be in session. So there won't be anything potentially before us to consider for probably 2 more years. At least that's the way that I see it. I do want to take a minute, though, to provide some introduction to the folks that we have here that will be sharing information with you this evening. And we want to provide an opportunity to hear from you as well. Representative Tony Guerrera, State Representative, who was also chair of the Transportation Committee, was elected to the Connecticut Legislature in a special election in 2001. Representative Guerrero represents the 29th District, which includes Rocky Hill and parts of Wethersfield and Newington. He is the House Chair of Transportation and is a member of Banks and Veterans Affairs Committees. A former claims litigation specialist for Aetna and Middlesex Mutual Companies, Representative Guerrero founded his own construction firm in 1998. I'm also pleased to have with me my co-ranking member of the Transportation Committee, who I previously served in the House for all of my 10 years there, and she's now moved to the upper chamber. State Senator Tony Boucher was elected to represent the 26th Senatorial District in 2008 after having served as state representative for the 143rd Assembly District for 12 years. The 26th Senatorial District includes communities of Bethel, New Canaan, Redding, Ridgefield, Weston, Westport, and Wilton. Senator Boucher has assumed the leadership role in the Transportation Committee at the time when the state and nation is reaffirming its commitment to mass transportation. While serving as a member of the Transportation Committee as a state representative, she worked to protect and improve the Danbury branch line and helped lead the way in traffic relief initiatives for southwestern Connecticut, especially with respect to rail service. Today, Senator Boucher continues to work to modernize commuter rail lines by keeping public policy focused on parking, train station enhancements, and more frequent, faster rail service. We're also very pleased to have with us tonight the Commissioner from DOT, Joseph Marie, who's sitting in the front row. Mr. Marie is the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation, having recently been appointed by Governor Rell in June of 2008. As Commissioner, Mr. Marie is responsible for the construction and maintenance of Connecticut's roads, highways, bridges, and state's public transit system. He also oversees a 3,200 employee agency, as well as commuter and freight rail line, shoreline ports, piers, ferries, and Bradley International Airport. Mr. Marie joined the department from his previous position of Chief Operating Officer of Metro in Phoenix, Arizona. Mr. Marie has overseen the successful start of 2 major rail systems initiatives in Arizona and Minneapolis since 2002. We also have with us Mr. Charlie Barone. Mr. Barone has been with the Department of Transportation for 32 years. He currently serves as Bureau Chief and provides management oversight for planning studies and associated activities for the movement of people and goods for all modes of transportation, including highways, rails, bus, aviation, maritime, bicycle, and pedestrian, as well as commuter parking facilities. Notice it didn't say tolls. Mr. Barone oversees the Department's Office of Policy and Systems Information and the Office of Intermodal and Environmental Planning. Mr. Barone will be explaining the process of receiving federal approval for any tolling changes to our interstate highway and the limitations and restrictions that will be in place. We have with us Ms. Jill Kelly. Ms. Kelly is the co-chair and founder of the Connecticut Citizens Transportation Lobby. Ms. Kelly has served the public sector for a number of years. She is a former selectman of the town of Fairfield and served as chairman of Fairfield Zoning and Board of Appeals. The Connecticut Citizens Transportation Lobby is a group of concerned citizens working to improve transportation in Connecticut with both long and short-range goals. The lobby is working on all facets of the problem, including rail, bus, highway, and barge. Ms. Kelly will provide you with information of the study conducted by Cambridge Systematic Incorporated on different tolling options and their impacts. In addition, tonight we have other dignified representatives who also deserve introduction, and we're lucky enough to have what I believe to be one of the strongest legislative delegations in the state of Connecticut from this region. And we're lucky to have both Senator Michael McLaughlin, who represents Danbury and Bethel and New Fairfield and Sherman. And he's a new member of the Transportation Committee beginning in January. And we have with us Representative Jan Gigler, who represents Danbury and part of New Fairfield. She also is a new member to the Transportation Committee. And so this area is well represented with a voice and a vote for this region on any transportation issue. I'm trying to think if I left anybody out. Sorry.
It's not necessary.
We're also very pleased to have with us community leaders, and certainly that includes Mayor Mark Bowden, who's a former colleague in the legislature, and we have with us First Selectman Bob Salvaggi from the town of Brookfield, and we have Steve Bowl from the Greater Danbury Chamber of Commerce, its president, and former Mayor Jim Dyer. I wanted to start out by just giving you a little bit of brief history about tolls in Connecticut. After a horrific crash in 1983 in Stratford on 995, which killed 7, the state legislature made a conscious decision for public safety reasons and for good reasons, to eliminate all tolls in the state of Connecticut. I would tell you that I think that was a wise decision. Obviously, it affected the state of Connecticut in a detrimental way as far as the source of revenue. And at that time, the state of Connecticut replaced that source of revenue by implementing a gross receipts tax, which then funds the transportation fund here in the state. There are other issues of concern that have been raised by members of the public, and they're very obvious to many. A disproportionate burden on commuters and we have many of them here in the state of Connecticut, who commute outside the state on a daily basis. There's concern about the waste of precious motor vehicle fuel, if there is congestion caused by tolls, the obvious creation of safety hazards. But I think one of the ones that most people don't realize, and I think it's an important factor in any consideration of tolling, is that we get rewarded by the federal government for having made the conscious and responsible decision to eliminate tolls because of the safety hazard. And right now, part of the reason that we get the level of federal funding that we do, and 80% of all of our infrastructure projects here in the state are subsidized by the federal government, is because we don't have tolls. And when I say that, I say it as a piece of information. I think it's important to realize that. We actually eliminated 8 toll stations on I-95 and Route 52, and subsequently in 1986 the closing of all tolls on Merritt and Wilbercross Parkways. In 1978, Congress added a provision to the federal law that allowed segments of toll roads that were part of the interstate highway system to qualify for funding, which Connecticut took full advantage of. In 2008, the legislature provided funding to hire a consultant to conduct the toll and congestion pricing study and provide analysis on several alternatives. In February of 2009, the Transportation Strategy Board introduced a draft copy of the study. A summary of that report is provided to the audience as handouts, and Jill Kelly will talk more about that study and its findings. Following the results of the study, the Transportation Committee held a public hearing that I referred to earlier in late February, and the top tolls and congestion pricing, during which we had testimony from a variety of interests and experts. On March 13th, the Transportation Committee passed Senate Bill 445, which further required DOT and budgetary resources to analyze by June 2010 the implementation of tolls in Connecticut. While electronic tolling is the future and helps maintain speed at tolling facilities, we will still need conventional toll booths for drivers who don't have electronic transponders. If operated by the state, there would be added costs associated with wages and benefits for staffing those booths. There are certainly safety concerns traveling at 65 miles an hour and having to come to a sudden stop. Depending on the toll levels, diversion rates could range from 5.29% to 21.28%. And it's estimated that 13,800 vehicles on a daily basis would be potentially diverted during peak hours, particularly at commuter time, onto local or other state roads. That, I believe, is a very significant concern to this area. Most of our commuters that travel out of the Danbury region do so going towards New York State on 84 to 684. There are lots of opportunities for them to get off 684 or Route 22 north of that by traveling on roads like Route 35, Route 6, Route 202, taking them through residential areas. We already have a problem like that here in this region when from time to time we get the way station open and truckers are aware of that and wind up meandering through residential streets in the area, which really is not only a nuisance but a potential safety hazard. Those are things that we have to consider. And when I say that, I think we have to consider all benefits and all potential effects and impacts that it would have, not to mention the economic impact that it has to individuals, and in this area also to businesses. We have one of the largest malls in New England located here, right off 84, close to the New York State border in Danbury. Many people from bordering states travel into Connecticut to make purchases, and it's not only isolated to the mall. There's lots of retail businesses that benefit from people purchasing that live out of state because of the close proximity, and there is a potential that that stream would be affected. So with that, I'd like to, at this point, turn over to our House Chair, Tony Guerrera, to make some comments in regard to tolls before we hear from some of our other featured speakers.
Well, thank you, David. And again, we did have some public hearing in regards to the tolls, and the TSB had their meetings with the Cambridge report. And what we're looking at is that we need to start looking at other revenues. It is my feeling, ladies and gentlemen, that we cannot rely on a gas tax. The future of our automobiles in the next 5 or 6 years will be getting 50, 60, even 70 miles per gallon. There is a possibility instead of going to fill up your tank, you're going to be plugging your cars in. So when the Cambridge report came out and talked about border tolls, we felt as though that was the most reasonable tolling system in regards for the DOT to look at and for the state of Connecticut to look at. Now, if this should ever happen, one hand has to follow the other. And that would be that if we're going to have tolls, that means we need to reduce the gas tax. It was my understanding that if we reduce the gas tax, it would go at 50%. And then subsequently, years after that, bring it down to another 25%, which would allow 25% of the gas tax in the state of Connecticut. Now, to me, I think that's a good idea. Now, there are other people, obviously, that have some concerns on the borders, and that is why I'm here. I do want to hear some of the concerns, what are the problems that maybe I'm not seeing, because to be quite honest with you, I don't live on the towns that border Massachusetts or New York. I live right in the middle of Rocky Hill, which would not be affected quite as much as Senator Boucher and Representative Scrivener's district. But we need to know that, because if we're going to move forward with this or not move forward, we need to have all information in place. And I think this is a good outlet for us to come out and meet with individuals like yourselves, because unfortunately, you do all work and you can't go up to the Capitol during testimony to voice your concerns. And maybe this is a start for us to maybe start hitting other communities to find out what their concerns are. But again, this is something now, I want everyone to be very clear though, is that we're not talking about the old toll booths back in the 80s. We're talking about electronic tolling, which is basically a bar that would go over the highway that would send a signal to maybe a transpondent on your dash or on your license plate, and basically you would get billed for that by month. Now, some people may think that I'm thinking too far into the future, but I do believe within the next 5 years that our automobiles will have automatic transponders on their vehicles, which would allow you to go through any state and basically send a signal that if you're going through New York, it's this much, if you're going through Connecticut, it's this much, and if you're going through Massachusetts, it's this much. We've seen the technology come so far. We just passed a cell phone bill a few years back saying that no one can use their cell phones. And at that time I said, there'll be a day where you'll be talking to your car in regards to making phone calls, and that day has come. Ford has introduced vehicles of that, and Mercedes and Lexus all have that now. So, I mean, we have to start thinking outside the box here, that we cannot rely solely on the gas tax. And if we do collect revenues from tolls, it would be hopefully under the guidance of the Transportation Committee that money goes back to the infrastructure of our roads and be used for mass transit. Now, there's going to be some dilemmas in regards if we do toll, and Charlie's here and the commissioner's here to talk about whether we can use that money to to be allocated for mass transit. Well, if we can't use that money to be allocated for mass transit, then maybe some of the gas tax that we still have there, that 25%, can be used for our rails and for our buses to get our rail system underway here. So again, this is a good start. I think it's important that we open up the dialogue to understand the concerns that you all have in your area here, and by all means, as Representative Scribner say, I would love to see something happen by 2010, but realistically, you know, being in the legislature for 10 years, this is a complicated issue. It's an important issue, and I don't think we should just jump into it, you know, without thinking of all the consequences or the concerns that our public has. So that's why we're here, to hear some of your concerns and the feedback, and maybe take it back from here and have some other forums at the Capitol in regards to how we can mold this that would make it beneficial for people like yourselves. Whether it's tax incentives because you're under orders, maybe you would have some type of tax breaks on your income taxes, whatever it may be, but something that would help benefit the offsets of you living in that border. So with that, I'll turn it over to Charlie and then turn it over to Skell.
Good evening, everybody. I've been with the Department of Transportation, as I said, for over 30 years. And I'd say that the issue of reinstatement tolls has been on every year since the tolls were removed. It's a pretty important issue. It's one that the Department of Transportation is neutral on. We don't have a position on it. We're looking at our policymakers up at the Capitol to make that policy, whatever it might be, and that we would follow through and implement it. As far as a few points I'd like to bring out is that our funds that we receive are through the Federal Highway Administration. It's Title 23 of the U.S. Code. And under that Title 23, right now as it exists, is very specific as to how you can implement tolls. There's tolls that you could put on express lanes for a demonstration program. There's tolls that you could do for high occupancy vehicles on HOV lanes. The high occupancy HOV lanes can bring them to hot lanes. There's a program that they have for interstate system reconstruction and rehabilitation pilot program, which they've allowed 3 states to get involved with that, and there's not one of them. I think there's still one open. But that program basically is to have toll the road to fund and meet construction needs that the state could not meet otherwise without the tolls. There's an interstate construction toll pilot program, and that's where if you were going to build a new interstate, Connecticut or any place else in the nation, it would have to be a brand new road. Title 23, Section 129 involves having a toll agreement. If the state were to enter into interstate tolls, the state of Connecticut would have to enter an agreement with the Federal Highway Administration on the use of the funds that you collect. And from what I've read over the years, number one would be to use it on any debt service that you incurred in building the tolls and financing them. The second thing would be the maintenance of the tolls. The road, you have to dedicate the money to maintain that road. There's also enforcement. You could take the money that you got from the toll collection to use for enforcement of the toll road. Now, there is an exception if the toll road is a congested pricing type toll road, then you can use it for mass transit. It has to be within the same corridor, and it would have to be in an agreement. So if the state of Connecticut was going to pursue that, one of the major things they would have to do is work out this agreement with the Federal Highway Administration. Now, there's also a value pricing pilot program as well, which is if you have existing tolls, you could change the pricing time of day to try to beat congestion. Managing congestion is probably one of the biggest things that the federal government looks at. I'll tell you, the federal government looks at it as for managing congestion, for building the roads, maintaining it. They don't look particularly at you implementing this to raise money, because they're going to Yes, that's, please, I'll pass it to Joe.
Pardon? Yeah.
Two mics.
Oh, I got two then. I'm here representing Kevin Kelleher, who is chairman of the Transportation Strategy Board, and he sent out a letter, which I'm just going to summarize as I start these comments. I, Kevin Kelleher, sincerely apologize for having to cancel my attendance at the Transportation Forum this evening. For the record, I would like to submit the following comments, such as my personal observations and not that of the Transportation Strategy Board. Connecticut has significant real challenges that require the examination and evaluation of topics and potential solutions that are controversial, proactive, and painstakingly difficult. The formula for government is no different than that for business, large and small. Costs must be reduced, cash must be maximized, revenue growth has to be achieved, and all strategies must consider the short-term impact as well as the longer-term opportunity as we all position ourselves today for the much-anticipated recovery of our economy in the future. Connecticut has a significant financial crisis which must be addressed. The governor has proposed $1 billion in cuts and the use of the rainy day fund. Her commitment is to maximize and share existing resources, be responsive to taxpayers, and help those in need. Before revenues can be addressed, spending reductions must be aggressively identified and contemplated, with a mindset of how we will mitigate the risks associated, not continue to propose how and why we can do it. Over the last several years, transportation has been moved to the forefront of Connecticut's budgetary considerations and commitments. On July 17, 2008, the TSB announced the selection of a consultant to perform a study on the viability of electronic tolling and congestion pricing within the realities of Connecticut's road and highway infrastructure. In fact, the scope of services identified 14 key elements that addressed our need to learn more about managing transportation demands and raising revenues. It has always been the intent that the study was not to make recommendations or decisions. In fact, in my letter to the Governor and General Assembly in 2007, I strongly emphasized that we must examine and understand strategic funding alternatives, inclusive of a comprehensive review of electronic tolling, congestion pricing, and public-private partnership. We are now at the early stages of review and consideration. There is much more to understand and evaluate, and we need to hear and learn more. Our infrastructure will not stop aging. Our financial deficits will not be solved by stimulus packages. Many provocative considerations will need to be carefully considered before hard decisions will be required. But one thing remains true. The decision will need to be made, and some more quickly than others. And I urge our elected officials to carefully and promptly evaluate the application of intelligent transportation systems, technologies that can serve as one of the many solutions available to us to stem the tide of decreasing revenues and investment into alternatives. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, and I'm very privileged to be with a number of colleagues, and particularly I wanted to commend the department, the commissioner, and the staff for coming all this way from Hartford after a very, very busy day, and certainly our chairman, Tony Guerrero, who really extended himself to come out this way, as he is so sincerely interested in what the public has to say on this issue, and I am as well. I can tell you that my constituents are a very hard sell on the issue of reinstituting tolling. But there's no question that we're entering an era of an economic imperative when it's our responsibility to study and examine all possibilities, especially as the ground is shifting under us both in technology and in revenue sources. In fact, the good chairman did mention that the car technology is changing, and an example of that is having a small Honda Fit outside that's getting nearly 40 miles per gallon. And when he brought this to my attention, he was right. I'm paying probably at the end of this year, probably half of the taxes that I might have paid the year before. So the state would be losing, if a number of us went this direction, quite a bit of revenue, and that shortfall needs to be met if we're going to improve the rail system that I'm and you all are so passionately supportive of. So again, thank you for being here. I'm very, very interested in hearing from you.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to provide an opportunity for the area legislators who are with us tonight to say a few words before we open up for discussion with the public. We'll start out with Senator Michael McLaughlin.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Michael McLaughlin. I'm the state senator from Danbury. I'm the state senator from Danbury. You got it? And I represent Danbury, Bethel, New Fairfield, and Sherman. I appreciate the opportunity to share some comments tonight and express my firm opposition to the placement of tolls on Interstate 84 in Danbury. Now, I'm going to zero in on the placement, not on the policy decision of tolls in general. But I brought a map with me tonight to demonstrate the large number of local roads that will be impacted by the placement of tolls here. And you can see from this map that Danbury, New Fairfield, Sherman, and Ridgefield will be dramatically impacted by this decision. If toll booths are necessary in Connecticut, then their location should be where drivers find few, if any, easily available bypass routes. This is best both to maximize revenues and to limit negative community impacts due to bypass traffic. From this perspective, let's look at the Danbury area situation. The geometry of I-84 itself brings into question the feasibility of any toll booth being placed on 84 at the Connecticut-New York state line. The reason is that the eastbound exit ramp at I-84 exit 1 in Danbury is located in New York State. Thus, eastbound I-84 traffic can easily divert to the parallel Route 6, making this driving decision while still in New York territory. To close this loophole, the Connecticut toll booth would need to be located well before Connecticut's I-84 exit 1, actually on I-84 in New York, a very unlikely situation. Once the Transportation Committee and DOT analyzes the detailed geometry of I-84 at exit 1, in relation to the state lines, they'll readily understand this point. I also think it should be noted, as Representative Scribner shared with us, that the Danbury Fair Mall, the largest retail concentration in Connecticut, serves much of adjacent New York State. This trade area would be reshaped if a toll is imposed on the I-84 access to the mall. This shopping facility is a major sales tax revenue generator for the state of Connecticut. The new toll revenue might be canceled out by the loss of business from New York State. Any toll on I-84 in central Danbury would induce bypass traffic into nearby downtown Danbury. Downtown Danbury is forcefully protected with a regional center designation by the Connecticut Conservation and Development Policies Plan that specifically prohibits state investments detrimental to downtown. In 2002, HEFCO, the Housatonic Valley Council of Elected Officials, and other regional organizations in the Danbury area retained a highly respected traffic engineer to evaluate the traffic impacts associated with a potential casino development in Danbury. The goal of the study was to examine the extent to which a major gaming facility would affect traffic and economic conditions in the region. The study assumed casino would be built on the former Union Carbide site, located on the south side of I-84 between exits 1 and 2. The construction of toll booths at the state line will create similar traffic challenges on local roads as described in the casino impact study. I thank you very much for being here. Welcome to the 24th Senate District and the 138th Assembly District. This is our home and we're glad you're here. Thank you.
I'd now like to provide an opportunity for my colleague, Representative Jane Giggler, to address the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to welcome everyone tonight to the 138th District, which is now has the distinction of being the border town, and also has the one that has 84 running right through it. It is a real concern to me that they are looking at 84 and Danbury for a potential toll. My first year in office, I had an issue with Mrs. Dietor from New Fairfield, who's here tonight, when the way station opened up. We used to have the trucks bypass the way station, go up Route 22, go down Milltown Road, go down Clapboard Ridge Road, and get on an exit 5 in Danbury. It was a real problem. It was a real problem for all of those that lived either on the Danbury side or the New Fairfield side of Milltown Road. It was an issue that we couldn't seem to resolve because actually Milltown Road is 2/3 in New York State and 1/3 in Connecticut. We tried to engage the legislative bodies out of New York State. We tried to engage the state troopers out of New York State to help us with this issue. And it was really, we had such a difficult time. We couldn't get the neighborhood associations on the New York side of the border to work with us. So we know what the issue is when it comes to traffic deviating off the highway. It only takes someone to travel on Route 6 on a Friday evening to see 84 all backed up. You wouldn't be going underneath any kind of electronic tolling. You'd be sitting under it for hours. Because we have 684, we have a tremendous amount of traffic coming in from New York State. We have those deviating off onto Route 6. We have those going into, in fact, Ridgefield even to circulate around so they don't have to work around exits 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up. As one that travels to Hartford daily, as my colleague Representative Scribner knows, because we travel together, and we love to evaluate all the problems that are on the highway, and Commissioner Marie, we offer our services to you at any time. We're getting quite good at it, actually. It really is an issue with congestion, and to put up a toll will just increase that congestion, but it's not only on the highway, but it's going to put it off on all of our side roads. We really need revenue in the state. We have to be creative in how we're going to get that revenue, but we also have to look at the quality of life and the impact that it's going to have on the residents within this part of the state, in this area. Because we live on the border, we're hopping the borders all the time. So many of our individuals that live right in the 138th District also work in White Plains, New York. They travel on the Brewster North Railroad. So you're constantly going into New York State, coming back. And on Sunday, we all know that Sunday sales puts everybody in the state of New York. So we need to look at the impact that has on our residents. The Danbury Firm Wall, as Senator McLaughlin made reference to, plays a huge role in the life of those that live in Danbury, Brewster, Pauling, even as far away as you get down to Katona. You get a lot of people that are coming into the Danbury Firm Wall. Will they choose to come here, or will they now choose to go to Westchester? Will they choose to go to the Jefferson Mall? We need to look at the fiscal impact that it's also going to have on our area if people choose to reroute or change the style in which they're living and where they choose to go. We realize that we need to increase revenues to the state. One only has to look at the potential budget problems that we have this year. But we need to make some hard decisions, but we have to make smart decisions on how we're going to address it. So I hope that this information session will be of interest to all of you tonight, and I really appreciate all of you coming in our direction. And now we'd like to get on the highway and go from exit 3 into New York State, so then you get more of a view about how the layout is with the intersections of 684, 84, Route 22, all coming in and the congestion that it causes in that part of the state. But I also want to thank Commissioner Marie for heading down from Hartford, and we welcome you to our district and hope you'll come back and we'll give you a tour. But thank you very much.
I'd now like to provide an opportunity to one of my friends and colleagues, Joe Tabersack, who has joined us after escaping the Judiciary Committee in Hartford.
Thank you. I have to first thank Chairman Herrera for making it all the way down here to come down to Danbury for this really important issue, and Senator Boucher and Representative Scribner for helping organize this very important opportunity for the public to speak to you. Also the Commissioner and the DOT and Ms. Kelly from the Transportation Strategy Board for being here today. It really is important to us, and it really does mean a lot that you came down here to the battleground, so to speak, for border tolling. I share the same concerns that my colleagues, Senator McLaughlin and Representative Giggler spoke of. So I won't, make all the same points, but I share their concerns, and which are primarily based on the quality of life impacts and the economic impact that the Danbury area might see if we had border tolls. I have not reached, given the magnitude of the economic problems that we have in this state right now, I have not concluded myself that tolls might not be in some form or fashion appropriate elsewhere in the state. I have great concerns, and I am opposed to having a toll on the Danbury border. I know that's convenient for me, being from Danbury, but I'm really concerned about what it would do to local businesses. I really feel that beyond the loss of sales tax revenue that I think we would experience, because we all know that New Yorkers do come over here in great numbers. You only have to go down to Stu Leonard's or the mall on any given day, not only on the weekends, but they come over here and they spend their money. And I'm familiar enough with that state over the border to know that there are nice places to shop down 684 and down 84 in the western direction, that if we were to put a toll on the border, I really do believe it would be just enough to send those people in those other directions. They do have options. They're not that far away. So I really worry about the local businesses in Danbury. And beyond the sales tax loss, I think that their loss in revenues would, result in job losses in the area and businesses losing that New York shopper that is currently spending their money here. So, and I also do share the concern, and I have some experience with what I would call way station evaders that currently do get off 84 and travel into our neighborhoods in order to evade a way station. I do think we'd have that same phenomena going on with the tolls, except that it would be a much greater magnitude, and it would make a bad situation like on Mills Lake Road, where we have serious congestion issues right now. It would make a bad situation even worse. So, but I thank you for coming here and listening to us. I really appreciate that you providing this opportunity to folks from Danbury. Thank you all for coming.
I have a secret switch on that mic. I think they do okay. We'll start inviting some people to come up and.
I'm going to suggest, I think that there's a number of people where we can hear each other reasonably well.
I agree.
And so rather than have it be more formal, anybody that'd like to speak, you just want to, raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you and allow you to either ask a question or make a comment or both. And I think we learned from you and want to hear what your thoughts and concerns are. And I know Mr. Bull is very anxious to express his thoughts, so we'll start with him. And you see if you feel comfortable where you are, or come on up here, whatever.
I feel very comfortable.
Okay.
We're for tolls. We think we should have tolls right on the Connecticut River. That's where we'd like to see them. A lot of what I'm going to say, and we do have a op-ed piece going, which I will refer to, will be in the News Times, I believe, on Sunday. But I do think when you're looking at tolling and you look at all the information and the rules and studies that have been done at all different types of states, and I know the proponents of tolls like to say it's not your grandfather's toll. Well, you know what? There's still people that don't have easy pays. And there's still people that have to swerve to get to the cash lane. And even with and I don't even know the name of it, where they take the picture of your license plate, there's an 18% failure rate with that, which they're willing to put up with because people are not going to go through the debate with some bureaucrat to get the thing changed. That is coming from the industry that does that. That's not me. That's studies after study that I've seen across the country. As I said, I will. We worked a long time on this, so I want you to hear it. In his metaphysical work, For Whom the Bell Tolls, the English poet John Donne wrote, "No man is an island, every man is part of the main. Such is true of life and in politics." Too often in Hartford, officials in Hartford ignore Donne's admonition and enact measures that supposedly will benefit the state treasury, i.e. the Maine, and fail to consider the impact that these decisions have throughout other parts of Connecticut. Recently, this report that was released and commissioned by the Connecticut State Transportation Strategy Board, analyzing whether the reinstatement of tolls on Connecticut roads is a viable public policy to enhance state revenues and provide an additional revenue source for roads, bridges, and highways. The report is voluminous. It contains terms like congestion pricing, hot lanes. However, like most government studies, besides being voluminous, the report facts, figures, and analyses lacks the common sense that should be starting point rather than an afterthought. Public policy initiatives, i.e., what will the overall impact be on residents of Connecticut and especially the border towns? First, tolls would disproportionately affect residents of Fairfield County, especially those that reside in border towns like Stamford and Danbury. Danbury is the economic retail engine for the state of Connecticut. Danbury proper reports over $4 billion annually in retail receipts. The region is $8 billion. There is no one that even comes close to that. And that's according to the 2007 Department of Urban Services. New Yorkers regularly flow over the border to shop at the Danbury Fair Mall and surrounding towns, Kettle Road. The reinstitution of tolls would discourage commuters from Northern, Westchester, and Putnam counties from shopping in Greater Danbury. Any sales tax advantage we have over New York could be lost, and the gain in revenue from tolls will be offset, perhaps significantly, by the decrease in sales tax from those areas. Furthermore, more creative, the familiar local bypass roads will alter their communities to avoid paying tolls. Through Brewster to Mill Plain Road, across Route 35 in Ridgefield, creating new traffic congestion and infrastructure issues on roads that are already over capacity. And one can only see 84 is backed up. Now it used to be just Friday nights. It's backed up almost every time. Perhaps a new study will be commissioned by the state of Connecticut, which will be called The Creation of Checkpoint Charlie in Western Connecticut. Now, I have a question. Did that report really cost $4 million?
Yes.
That's
One.
That's a number that's, I'm just, the loss of sales taxes and road congestion is only the top tip of the iceberg. Danbury area commuters would literally be punished for working in places like New York State. What about the cost of rebuilding, constructing, and operating tolls, including personnel, salaries, benefits? And there are safety concerns as well as the practicability incident that we talked about earlier on 84. And I know Charlie Warren was talking about. In addition, the federal implications arise with the reinstitution of tolls in Connecticut, including issues regarding the eligibility of federal highway funding, exceptions to the type of tolls that are allowed, and the myriad of other rules and regulations dating back to when tolls were removed in the 80s. I just have to interrupt what I'm saying for a second and just say, and I know the chairman, and I thank you all for coming down here. I think it's great that you're down here in the new center of the universe that we call it here. But I just think that, we do have, and I know you said that, we're going to get more energy efficient cars, but we do already have a fiscal instrument. If you really want to equitably raise money for infrastructure, and that is the gas tax. Now, yeah, maybe in the future, those cars will be doing 100 miles an hour. I don't know if that's the case, but they're not doing it now, and anecdotally, I still see a lot of SUVs on the road. So, in any event, I just thank you all for coming. I said enough, but I do think that we do need more study here before we do anything. And, we have a 2-lane highway out there, which I don't know how you can put a toll there. And as Mike McLaughlin was mentioning earlier, it's extremely, the infrastructure. I can't even imagine. There are more unanswered questions than questions answered with the study, because I just don't see how, and then once you get it running, how much is it going to cost per month? How much is personnel? How much, all this infrastructure. So, we don't want tolls here. We'd rather them be on the Connecticut River.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment on your last comment. Well, first of all, it was $1 million, not $4 million.
I don't know where that number came, but it was in the paper a
It's
couple
still
times.
real money.
Yeah.
But in any case, the technology now is that they will have gantries. And you won't have this, the old-fashioned toll with all the personnel. What they're going to do is, if you don't have the wherewithal in your car, you will have to pay by plate. Now, some people think that will affect their privacy, but if you're not speeding or that has to do more with cameras, but they will pay by plate. And that works very well down in Dade County, Florida, that's my understanding. I don't know about the 18% failure rate that you mentioned, but Dade County has been using this pay by plate, and if you become a scofflaw, and they can then, send the information up to the DMV here, and when you go to register your car the next time, they're going to say, uh-oh, you owe X number of dollars down in Florida, get your updated registration until you pay that off. So, but there isn't going to be this personnel cost that you perceive that were in the old tolls, because you're just going to go through very quickly.
If in fact that is the case, that addresses some of the safety issues, but it doesn't address the anecdotal evidence. When you drive around to any of our stores, Danbury Fair Mall, Federal Road, on any Saturday or Sunday, I should say any day of the week, I would say, a good percentage of those license plates are New York license plates. And people right across the line have many shopping options. They have Jefferson Valley. They even have a new mini mall up on the hill, right up here on 84. And they can go down to the Westchester. Give them a reason. And a lot of that transient traffic comes here 3 and 4 times a day. The little old lady in Brewster who comes across the line 3 and 4 times a day is not going to come across anymore to go to the Super Stop and Shop, or go to the Exxon station, or even go to the Danbury Fair Mall. Those are issues which I think we have to look at when we talk about border tolls.
Well, actually, the Cambridge Systematics had a list of 8 different tolling for congestion pricing options. So, the border doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all. There are many options that they start on page 3 of this handout.
Is it fair to say then your message to us is that you would prefer that we look at the sales tax in lieu of any tolling?
I said
Planners,
gas tax.
Is that what you would say generally
I said
represents?
a more equitable.
Gas tax, I'm sorry, gas
At
tax.
this time, if everyone's going to feel the pain of the state, but you are disproportionately going to hurt the lower towns, especially those like us who feel high in sales.
Would you say that your membership shares that view with you as well?
Very much so.
Okay, thank you.
Very much so.
The other aspect of that is that you have more flexibility with the tax proceeds from a sales tax or a gas tax. Tolling has very specific restrictions as to how that source of revenue can be used. Mayor Bowden, would you like to?
I think everybody's pretty much hit it fairly well. I guess just a couple of observations, and just for the record, that Danbury is adamantly opposed to location tolls anywhere within our borders. I think that Steve has eloquently stated the issue in terms of from an economic development standpoint from us. You know, Danbury made decisions dating back 100 years ago to host certain kinds of facilities here because they were an economic driver, not just for Danbury, but for the region. We employ people and we keep people working, and my concern is that any barriers to folks coming over the border to shop and spend their dollars here in Danbury is a barrier to growing us economically, and ultimately will result in job loss and other things. And without a larger plan to make folks whole on this, I think you really have to be careful that your trade-offs might not net the rewards that you're looking for. With all due respect to Ms. Kelly, I hope that we're not going to be emulating Florida. I don't quite think that's the model for us to look at in terms of what's on the cutting edge of public policy right now and what is really warranted. We also recognize that you've got a revenue problem, just like local municipalities do, and you've got to fund your transportation strategy board improvements, you've got to fund your DOT improvements, and we understand that those things, you got to find money to do that. However, I think that there's a variety of different options that you all might pursue. I appreciate the fact that you're looking at this and giving us a look. I would suggest it wouldn't take $1 million to tell you it's a bad idea. I mean, I think you can pretty much figure that out without spending all that money. But having said that, and now that it's spent, I think it's pretty clear that there are other ways in which you can generate the revenue you need to do to provide the infrastructure that you need to provide for us to be competitive in this next century. And I understand that's where you're going, what you're trying to do. But that I applaud you. Thank you.
Yes. If you could just please state your name.
My name is Elizabeth Theodore, and as you mentioned earlier, I am a true border dweller. I live on the border of, I live in Fairfield, but I live on the border of Danbury and Worcester, New York. And I can tell you firsthand, I knew every single time the exit 2-way station was open because the tractor trailers were driving right by my house. I knew during Iraqi freedom, they were driving by my house at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and there is nothing worse than listening to a tractor trailer drive by your house and downshifting at 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning. It wakes you up out of a sound sleep. It also scares me to think how fast they're going because they were not going slow. And that road is extremely narrow and winding. One time, a neighbor of mine was driving in the opposite direction towards New York State on Milltown Road and said she thought this tractor trailer was going to hit her head on. And she had 2 of her children in the car with her on the half. She was that frightened. It's a scary thing. They will use that road if we have a toll booth there. There is no question in my mind that they will be using that road and other roads in our area because that's just the nature of the beast. They don't want to pay. The truck drivers don't want to stop to have their trucks weighed because God knows what they're carrying and they're probably overweight. But they also are not going to stop to pay a toll. I know it. I can tell because I've seen it firsthand. So my 2 cents is that I don't want any tolls on the borders in Danbury. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, Chair, and other elected officials. I'm Paul Rose Hollow. I represent the 6th Ward on the Danbury Common Council. Test. That includes Route 7, Route 6, and 84, exits 2 and 3. Thanks. And I can attest how easy it is to hop off of 84 onto a certain street to escape either traffic or a toll or a bag or anything like that. I'm not convinced if the game plan is to raise funds by sealing up the borders with tolls, that it's actually going to work in the Danbury area, unless you've got some intense cooperation with New York State, which from previous testimony this evening doesn't really sound like you've got. A couple of other issues have come up while I've been thinking about this, and they all sort of go back to raising funds in general. The idea of a gas tax is about as equitable as you can make it if the idea is the more that you drive, the more that you pay. Regardless of what your mileage is, the fact remains the more gas you buy, the more tax you're paying, and the more gas you're buying, the more driving you're doing, the more wear and tear you're putting on the roads. It is true that as we move into the future, these cars are getting greater and greater mileage. For the people that are left behind, the tradespeople who have trucks that perhaps can't take advantage of this, will be at a disadvantage. But if public policy is to push mileage forward, the idea probably isn't to penalize those people who are actually making the investments to get the cars that are getting that mileage. And also weight has a lot to do with the wear and tear on the roads, and the fact remains at this point in time, the lighter the car, the better the mileage, and the lighter the car, the less wear and tear on the road. So it would seem to me that if we really want to make it equitable, we should spend a little bit more money, like maybe that $1 million or the next $1 million, on figuring out how to fine-tune the gas tax, as opposed to doing tolls. One of the issues with tolls on 84 in particular is the fact that if you don't use 84, you don't pay any tolls. People in the northern part of the state and the eastern part of the state are not big frequenters of I-84. Even people in Fairfield County who live in Danbury and commute to, say, Richfield. We're a little farther south. You rarely use 84 unless you have to go someplace. In general, a lot of my constituents are commuters to New York on 84 several times a day. So if you were planning on raising a toll tax and reducing a gas tax, you're really putting the burden to pay for the infrastructure on a small minority of people, those people who happen to use either 84 or 95. And that seems to me somewhat unfair. For my money, let's focus on the gas tax. And if we have to do a toll at some point, we really have to think about entire borders. It's just not, it's not going to work with borders, and it's also going to penalize, as members have eloquently stated, it really is going to penalize the process that we've set up in Danbury by making it a retail and industrial hub. Thank you.
I just, real quick, a question. I'm sorry, what was your first name?
Paul.
Paul. And you make some good points here. I think through the Cambridge study, too, correct me if I'm wrong on that when we felt as though people in the state of Connecticut were being penalized because of the gas tax. That people who fill up in New York and travel right through the state without filling up. And because we have one of the highest gas tax, that truckers would fill up out of state and use our roads and not really pay their fair share. So that was one of the reasons why we were leaning towards the toll, that we felt as though we were catching people out of state that were coming into our state.
And because we're small enough, you can make it from one end to the other without filling up. Yeah, that's another issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, it works both ways. I can go to the river, I can go to the Hudson and back without filling up and use New York's facility. I mean, this is something that I'm not sure that we're looking at that as I guess you'd have to do a survey. Someone mentioned earlier about trying to figure out how many people shop at the Danbury Mall. And you can do that, and I hope the DOT would actually do that if you're going to consider this. Do a license plate survey. Find out what percentage of shoppers are coming in from out of state. But you could also do the other survey and find out how many people are using our facilities without paying any taxes.
I mean, the flip side to that is that the people who are coming in here to avoid paying sales tax in Putnam County, Dutchess County, and Westchester County, which is about 1% to 2% higher than here. So you might be losing on your gas tax, but you're making it back up on your sales tax by having easy access and being able to access our goods and services for 6% versus 8.5%.
And then the question goes to there is that, can we use that to fix our infrastructure?
Well, no, because we need it. But,
how do I know you're going to say that?
You take it anyways. I mean, look, in Danbury's case,
you're always wanted.
Danbury's case, 10% of the sales tax you collect is generated right here. 10%.
We appreciate it.
We don't get that.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Dyer. I'm a former member of the House of Representatives and also a board member of the city of Danbury. I was the mayor when we decided that the mall was a good thing for the city of Danbury, that it would be a great economic anchor for the city of Danbury. One of the factors we looked at when we were recording the mall, as opposed to putting it in Brookfield or Southeast New York, where those two sites were considered, was a $300 million retail loss in sales to areas mostly in New York State. So it made good economic sense to bring the mall. I can't imagine what that would be in today's dollars. So we wouldn't want to do anything to detract from the revenue to the mall, the sales tax revenue to the state of Connecticut, not to mention the property tax and the jobs to the city of Danbury. Anything that would impede that development, that growth, that economic stability would be a negative, in my opinion. Now let me tell the other side of it. For 15 years, I've been in Newark, New Jersey, down the Garden State Parkway and across the Tappan Zee. I saw all the various incarnations of Easy Pass. And believe me, New Jersey did not have it right at the start. All the lane switching, the signage was horrible. Not everyone bought into Easy Pass. I did. I thought it was great. Just drive through. When they put the high-speed lanes in, that made it much more palatable because you didn't have to stop at all. You could just fly through at 60, 70, whatever. But there were still people who did not participate, still people who would lose their way approaching the toll booths. So if you ever do this, I would suggest talking to New Jersey and see what their experience was to get it right if you do it, because there was a lot of confusion at first and a lot of accidents too. But I oppose it because I live on the border town. I think it will seriously impact the economic development of the city of Danbury. I further think it will seriously impact all these side streets. One of them I live on. So I see all the trailer trucks avoiding the way station going over Manhattan Road now. That's not to say there couldn't be more local enforcement there.
Yeah, I gotta give it to them.
So proceed with caution. I know you will. I've been part of that process. I know there'll be all kinds of arguments going back and forth on both sides of the aisle. But let's not just make it a revenue issue, because right now that's all anyone's talking about is revenue. The governor's talking about cutting spending, which isn't a half bad idea. It may not be as simple as we want it to be. And of course, nobody wants their program impacted. So anyway, that's my approach from the economic standpoint of the city of Danbury and the planning we made when we brought them all here. 84 never had tolls. I-95 and Merritt did. So I'm not so sure I-95 is, put them there. 84 just isn't laid out to have tolls, unless you put it over near Waterbury.
Thank you.
Sure. I just have some questions. I'd like to know, why do we have weigh stations? Why do we have weigh stations?
Commissioner, you're finally up.
Yeah.
I want to know.
One of the reasons is to have the trucks come in and they actually weigh them to see if they're overweight, if they're illegally produced.
And when are they doing it? Because I never see them hardly open at all.
And they also check for safety violations on the trucks, as far as light sprays and things like that.
But they usually are not open. I live here in Danbury, I don't very rarely see them open. How often are they open?
There is a schedule. I don't have that schedule, because I know that this question can come up a lot because people don't see
Is it once a month? Is it once a year?
It's a certain number of shifts per week. And it's different in Danbury than it is down in Greenwich. And so I'm not familiar with Danbury.
I don't see it open very
But they are open. And a law was passed just last year in the legislature that required that the state police have their hours of openness transparent, and they must fill in various points of the number of hours they're open, time schedule that they're open, of the revenue they collect when they're open, the infractions, and there are just 8 different points, and that is on the internet, and you can get that for it's Danbury, all 5 stations, so it's on the internet.
Well, perhaps that might be something to look at, where they could collect some more revenue for the state if they're looking, instead of trying to get it from the residents or people that would be coming here. Because, everybody's asking everybody to cut, and now everybody wants everybody to pay. Where is the end of it, And, you're talking, we pay a gas tax here that's higher than, I think, anywhere. And you mentioned the smaller cars, etc. And, then should we raise the gas tax? Well, is that fair? No, I don't think so. And I don't think it's fair to, keep asking everybody to cut. And then, I think we have to cut our budget, period, somewhat to, it's just not up to, everything has to be cut to enable things to correct themselves. But I just don't find, I just can't see putting tolls up. And, it just isn't, maybe if there's a way they could, trucks would be, maybe they should pay more. They're the ones that are going over the roads and doing more damage than cars.
If I could, I'm Joe Murray, Commissioner of Transportation, DOT. Let me say that the way stations are open enough so that it is enough of a deterrent for truck drivers not to obey the law and not to have overweight vehicles. Naturally, we don't want to have overweight vehicles because we do have some weight restrictions on some of our bridges across the state, so there is safety issues as to why we do that. As it relates to the gas tax in the state of Connecticut, it's not the highest in the country. It's one of the highest.
That's what I said. It is one of the highest. I didn't say it was the highest.
It should be noted that Massachusetts just about a month and a half ago proposed a 27-cent increase.
I don't live there.
The reason why I want to say that is because I think we need to put this into a broader context as to what's happening in the country. Okay. The truth of the matter is that revenues are down across the country, and infrastructure needs, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic and New England states, are continuing to rise. Connecticut has some of the oldest infrastructure in the country. Our bridges are on average 50 years old. So when you lay that out and the challenges in front of us, I think what we need to recognize is that the cost associated with maintaining that aging infrastructure in Connecticut is growing, and it's going to continue to grow. And if we don't do something about that now, we're going to leave a very large problem to the next generation. So while we're not endorsing any, as Charlie mentioned earlier, we're not endorsing tolls. Your DOT is concerned, as are other DOTs, particularly in the New England and Mid-Atlantic and Northeastern states, about the age of our infrastructure and about the challenge that will pose. One of the analogies I'd like to put before folks is that there was an old commercial that was a Fram oil filter commercial. Remember that old commercial where the mechanic has a filter in front of him and he says, well, if you don't pay me now, you're going to pay me later. If you don't change your oil, you're going to blow your engine. And I think we're going to leave the next generation a pretty big problem with the infrastructure of the state if we don't get out in front of some of these issues now, because the revenues associated with the special transportation fund or the gas tax that drive the special transportation fund are drying up. They're going down because more and more people are buying.
And so are people's personal funds. Sure. Same thing. Sure.
Right.
It's not just one-sided. People are really at their wits' end. Everybody's trying to cut.
And I think that people in the state, and I think the legislature and the governor are working really hard to ensure that the state government is more efficient. We're going through a very difficult exercise now on the budget to try to get it there, to make it more streamlined and efficient. But we are all challenged with the infrastructure, age that we have in this state, and it's going to continue to be a problem for some time.
Absolutely, but as I said, we all are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joe De Silva. I live in Danbury, Connecticut, and this is truly an issue that politics makes strange bedfellows. Because I'm the Democratic Town Chairman in Danbury, and I come here and I'm in 100% agreement with my mayor, my city councilman, and most of the rest of the people in this room. It's interesting, every time the budget gets tight, it seems that tolls come back up as a solution. And while it's an interesting idea, I'm fairly certain that it's not an idea that ever emanated from anybody near a border where there might actually be a toll. It sounds like a great idea if one is sitting in Meriden or Chester or Colchester or Brooklyn or West Hartford. It seems like a lousy idea if you're near a border for a variety of reasons outlined by everybody here tonight. Now, I understand the predicament the state, the federal, and the local government are in, and I don't envy anybody's choices this year. None of them are good. None of them are attractive. And whenever you go out to any seminar or evening like this, it's a long conversation of gore someone else's ox, I realize. That said, I guarantee you a border toll in 84 will result in a disaster on, as previous spokesperson said tonight, roads in New Fairfield, roads in Richfield. This road at the bottom of this hill, Millbrae Road. Now, on a day when Interstate 84 is busy, I defy anybody to figure out a way to make their way down Millbrae Road in Danbury. It's 2 lanes, runs straight from New York all the way to the center of the city of Danbury, and it is already a bad road traffic-wise anyway. It always has been. There's a lot of development on it. It's a very busy road. Can we imagine what that would be like when people try to avoid a border toll? Because they will, number one. Number two, as we heard from our Chamber of Commerce, as a business sense, it's a bad idea. The number of people coming over this border to work, to shop, to everything else, if that drops, it impacts us all revenue-wise, not just in terms of whether they are or not using our road. And last but not least, I will concede that I am not fundamentally aware of what gas prices are in Rhode Island at the border, or even for that matter Massachusetts, although I'm fairly certain they're not that distinctly different than they are here. I'm very aware of what the gas prices are in New York and prices in general. I doubt anybody ever went to Westchester, New York for a bargain. Westchester, New York is not someplace one goes to bargain shop. It is one of the richest counties in the United States. It is one of the most expensive counties in the United States for everything. So I think it's highly unlikely anybody's gassing up in Westchester and then driving through Connecticut to avoid Connecticut prices. Now, we may gas up in New Jersey and avoid gassing up in New York or Connecticut, I will concede. New Jersey gas taxes are much lower, even full service significantly cheaper than here. We're not going to avoid that. We don't avoid that now, much less with a toll. So I highly doubt they're gassing up just short of the line and then coming into Connecticut. So while I don't envy your position, sales tax, gas tax, income tax, millionaire's tax, call it whatever you wish, somebody's ox and everybody's ox is likely to get gored this year. This is not the method to do it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming today. It was very interesting to sit through this. I am the senior property manager for the Danbury Fair Mall, and I really appreciate everyone's comments here. You know, we certainly are in opposition of the tolling. The property generates approximately 40% of its business from the New York border markets. And not just Danbury Fair Mall, all of our retailers in this great Danbury area. I mean, all of us talk, and a lot of our business is really brought in from that New York border. We consider it a dual market. That's how we promote ourselves. And so I think that just Danbury and its location, and why we all selected to come here, so many businesses, and not just retail, but a lot of businesses. We attract a lot of workers and a lot of retail from those neighboring borders. So I thank everyone for their comments, and certainly we're in agreement. Thank you.
My name is Brian Whalen. I'm a Danbury, Connecticut My take on this whole thing is, well, let me try to do it one by one. Representative Scrivener brought up a good point. So you're going to look at both the benefits and the negative side. I think it was, I'm not sure what that term was, but any of the negative side of the whole thing, the whole idea about putting up tolls. And I'm not just looking at Danbury, I'm thinking about the whole state.
It is state.
I agree with everybody in here, all their arguments about Danbury. This is definitely a bad idea. But for 14 years, I traveled down to Norwalk, and I was the safety director for a trucking company down there. It used to be Valerie's, who now had a business. We were in business for about 50 some odd years before I ended up going down. We ran 200 trucks on the road every day, and this was back when we didn't have the tolls down in Stamford. As a matter of fact, when they opened up the new way station down there, that old way station was a brand new one. It's a Class A way station. I was there for the opening as part of Motor Transport, one of the members of Connecticut Motor Transport. Terrific revenue, yes. Do we need the revenue? Absolutely. Would I like to get the revenue from other states? Sure. But as you say, you're going to lose some of that, I think. Now, on the safety part, the biggest thing is benefits, yes, we get the income. That's the benefit. That's the only thing I can see is the revenue. And as you, Mr. Guerra, said, it sure would be nice to get the outsiders to pay into our revenue. I totally agree with that. How we're going to do that, I don't know, but I don't think tolls is the answer. On the negative side, I had to pick out safety first because that's my career type thing, and I saw awful lot of accidents, awful lot of holdups. And I don't care if you have an electronic thing or not, sensor type thing. On 84 here, or in, as most of you know, down on 95 going through Stamford, I don't care what kind of sensor you have, that's not going to slow up the traffic. Or it's not going to speed up the traffic, I should say. You come down here on 84 and go over to, I used to get out of White Plains Airport all the time, or over to Stewart to the airport there, a little closer than Bradley. I'd rather do that, but anyway. You're stopped dead in the morning when you're trying to get to the airport. And if you're coming across from New York, I went up to Cheshire for the last 10 years. I've been working in Cheshire for a Connecticut, insurance company up in Cheshire as a safety consultant. And I saw more New York plates than anything else. So you do get a lot of traffic, and I wonder how many of those are going to go find someplace else to work or shop or whatever when they start adding this kind of cost to their daily drive. Longer travel time. I was looking at the business interruption, but everybody else brought that up. You mentioned the possibility of lowering the gas tax down to 50% maybe, and maybe later on down another 25%. But the gas tax was what took the place of the tolls in the first place. So that money was supposed to go towards the infrastructure and maintenance and everything towards the road. Why isn't it? Is it going to the general fund, or is it really being dedicated towards the maintenance and everything in the roads?
Go to the general fund.
You may be able to say that. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't belong in the general fund, just like with Social Security, what the feds did. They put it in a general fund. It's not going to Social Security. That's why they're broke. Well, it could be the same problem with the tax money. So if you bring it down, if you put up tolls, certainly you should totally eliminate the gas tax, not just reduce it, because now we're being double taxed if that happens. That's not really the right thing to do. That's all I'm saying. Somebody brought up the way stations. I think they're good, but yeah, it'd be a great. With more enforcement, we could get more revenue, and it would be great if we could find some money to add more state troopers. I know that's all agreed. It sure would be nice.
I'm feeling positive about government, at least at the state level, because you folks are here, and you're listening to our concerns, and you're being deliberative. You're not jumping into anything and spending $700 billion or whatever it is. I appreciate that. I wish we were getting that kind of treatment from the people we send down to Washington. In any event, thank you very much for being here and doing what you're doing.
I second that. I meant to say that.
I think I'm gonna come to Danbury more often, Dave.
Spend some money one year.
I've been told I have a big mouth, so I probably don't need it. I want to thank all the panel members, our state reps, and DOT members for coming here tonight and also listening to our concerns. I'd like to understand one thing. I won't reiterate all the comments that were made because I concur with all of them that were made here tonight. Lord knows, I don't envy you guys trying to produce the revenue you have to do it, and Lord knows you're going to find a way to get it from us, unfortunately. Whether it be the gas tax or whatever, but I do think the gas tax is fair. Regardless of whether a car gets 100 miles a gallon or using hydrogen, you can find an equitable way to adjust the tax. We're used to fluctuating gas prices, so I think that's the most equitable way. I have a personal stake. I live on Route 39, and I concur with this young lady's impact on Milltown Road. I see the trucks come by when the weigh stations open. I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm well aware of the Jersey Turnpike. I work for an engineering firm that of the liaison to Jersey Turnpike and Garden State Parkway. So I understand that infrastructure and requirements required to implement those things. There's a huge administrative impact that needs to be taken, whether you have those tolls or not. There's a lot of people that don't want Easy Pass just because of the privacy issue with government. I have one. I don't have a problem, but you have all these issues. The safety is a huge one. I don't know what the cost-benefit ratio is. If we have tolls, what do we lose in federal highway funds? I haven't seen that in this report here. Obviously, there's a push for mass transportation. I don't know if this is an impetus in order to get people to use mass transportation, but I think it's a little backwards to try to implement tolls when we should probably be investing in the tools and technologies for mass transportation so that we as a society get more used to using that. And I totally respect the DOT members. Being a building contractor myself, and with all due respect, I think DOT personnel is one of the least productive personnel I observe anywhere in the state. And I apologize, I don't take affront to anybody personally, but I don't think they do the best job in the world as far as productivity goes. And that would just be more DOT personnel. So anyway, I thank you again for being here. I concur with all the comments that were made, and I don't think it's polls here in Danbury is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly just had a comment. I think you should mention it. She said
when you were speaking, it occurred to me, one of the options here is a tax vehicle miles traveled, and you would be taxed with a pump. And this was discussed a little bit at the most recent Transportation Strategy Board meeting, and they were suggesting that you pay the pump. It would probably have to be on a regional basis, though, because Connecticut's so small, as we pointed out, that you fill up probably in New Jersey. But if you did it, then dedicate that money to transportation needs and infrastructure, and then eventually get rid of the gas tax. Let this become, a greater proportion. Have you given any thought to something like that? Vehicle mileage tax.
So what it is basically the vehicle mileage tax, it would be get rid of the gas tax and basically be taxed on how many miles they're using. So someone that uses their car maybe 20 miles a week.
That's the idea that VMT was actually floated several weeks ago by Secretary Ray LaHood from the federal government level.
The commissioner was in Washington, by the way,
and it was met with a rather strong rebuke from the president. So I don't think the national and federal levels quite ready for that type of approach. I would say two things. First of all, I had a very nice dinner at the Windmill Diner just down the road. I did contribute to the local economy. At the risk of sounding somewhat defensive, bear in mind that I have a very short tenure here. I've only been here for 10 months. I'm a transit person. I have been my whole life, my whole career. Your personal anecdotal thoughts about the productivity and effectiveness of the DOT is not supported by the objective empirical evidence. If you go on to our website, our performance as an organization and efficiency in terms of employees actually stack up very favorably to most other DOTs around the country. So I invite you to have a look on our website to look at that and verify it.
I appreciate that. That wasn't personal.
I know.
I just, relative to other DOTs, that's the key point.
I am glad that someone brought up vehicle miles driven idea. It's a very new concept, and it would certainly be the right approach for someone like me, because then they would get my tax dollars since my car gets such high gas mileage, but I drive probably twice as much as anybody else. I think I put 210,000 miles on my car, or 250,000 miles on my car since 2000, just driving back and forth to Hartford. So it would capture individuals like myself that drive a lot, and you would then not have to be dependent on tolls. You can get as much gas mileage as you want, and you would use less gasoline, but you would still pay a certain amount of tax on that. So I would love to have a better discussion of that. There is a problem with that in that it would maybe unfairly tax those people that must drive for a living. That's part of their job. And so that's an interesting topic. Hopefully we can delve into a little bit more.
Representative
Just one question. We talk a lot about the fact that people are gassing out in New York and Jersey, traveling to the state. Well, we used to years ago have a rest area at Exit 2, which was taken down, and a lot of the tractor trailer trucks that pull in there, gas up, continue to the state. They have one rest area that's way up by Stafford area, but there's no rest area on 84 from here to that point. I think that knowing how we travel at night and we see all these tractor trailer trucks pulled over on the side of the road, parked on the hill around Southbury, very dangerous because we come up at night and see all these headlights and you're thinking it's an accident. It's actually tractor trailer trucks all parked along the highway, which is a real safety issue. But they're also parked in areas that there's a car rest area that's over around Southington. But I really think we need to give some consideration to maybe a possible rest area along 84. It's not too along 84 where tractor trailer trucks can safely pull in, rest at night, but also we can get diesel revenues from them purchasing diesel within the state of Connecticut.
It's a very valid point, and of course we've observed some of this together. And I would tell you, certainly not isolated to the I-84 corridor. It's a chronic problem on I-95. Matter of fact, I think we've kind of chronically tried to address it, and there has been a lot of local opposition because of the trucks stopping and idling and being there for long periods of time. I don't have a ready solution. I don't know if the commissioner has something to offer, but it's certainly a problem that we have had before us, and we've tried to make efforts to address it, and I think it continues.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we come out here and actually spend a lot of time on traveling around the state is to hear these types of things, so I appreciate the point. One thing we are doing is we're doing a very comprehensive analysis of all of our service plazas now, looking within the context of that analysis of bringing greater capacity for those areas. So we are actually in an active proposal process where we're going to select a company, public-private partnership, to come in and make investment into the state's service plazas. And we should be having some developments in that area later this summer.
You know, if you live in the lower part of Fairfield County, that 95 corridor has a severe problem for truckers not having any space to actually rest at all. And they're double parked in places where they shouldn't. It's very dangerous. The one biggest area, and I share with the gentleman that has Easy Pass, I have an Easy Pass that I use from Massachusetts all the way to DC, both having 3 kids that went to school in Washington, DC over 12 years, having grandchildren there, traveling all the time. So I am intimately familiar with the whole Easy Pass system, and in fact was there before it started, and then when it was only in one state, and now you can take it all the way through Maryland and even Virginia. That Easy Pass system does work that way. But the best, I think, truck stop is really at the Lombardy, New Jersey gas station right before you get on the George Washington Bridge if you're in New Jersey. That's where everyone stops to get gas because it's a low gas tax. So everyone stops, and they have a massive facility for lots of trucks to be able to stay overnight or to sleep. We don't have that kind of space. We're a small and very dense state. So our problems are more magnified. We're small, but we have a lot of people. We have as many people as the entire state of Oregon, the state of Connecticut. Oregon, for as large as it is, has 3.5 million people. So, you know, and we travel a great deal by every mode of transportation possible, I believe. Water, air, trains, buses, you name it. And the most highly congested 95 corridor as well. So it's a great opportunity for a new Commissioner of Transportation, don't you think? They have a lot. It's a very interesting, enriching job, which we hope he stays.
Could anybody give a Reader's Digest version of how they would administer the vehicle mileage tax administratively? It sounds like a nightmare to me. And in light of the UConn game being on, I'm sure.
Is that out in the hallway?
I can probably provide you a little information on that. There has been a demonstration project in Oregon. What they did was they had a sampling group of about 200 people who volunteered for this VMT tax. During that period, they paid no gasoline tax. Actually, they got reimbursed for their gasoline tax. But they were charged from the VMT. They had a unit in the vehicle that registered how many miles they traveled. And when they gassed up at the pump, there were certain gas stations they had to go to. And when they gassed up at the pump, it took a reading off their odometer, that black box. And then they were sent a bill for that. And it was just a pilot program to see how well it worked. My understanding is that they were very encouraged by it. There were some problems with it. It was, but right now, that's the way they have done it out in Oregon. It doesn't help us with vehicle miles traveled on electrical vehicles. You know, there's some thought that you can do it by satellite, track you all the way wherever you go, charge you for the system that you're on. If you're on the interstate, you pay, I don't know, let's say 5 cents a mile. If you're on your local road, you pay 2 cents a mile. You know, there's all kinds of ideas out there. Yeah, different hours of the day. And most of it would be done electronically, but there is a cost associated with that. There's no doubt.
Yeah, there's an ongoing study right now in Germany for the trucks in the country, where they've equipped all the trucks with GPS devices. And there were some concerns about Big Brother and all this other stuff, but in the end, it's proved to be a fairly effective way. And again, we're not advocating. I think the good thing about this, and I appreciate listening to folks, is to have the dialogue, talk about the types of things that are on the menu. And I think that's why all of the legislative leadership came here today, was to really just talk about it, to have the dialogue in the state, and to have a high level of discussions.
Thank you.
Sir?
Just briefly, I think I agree with Senator Boucher that Boucher.
No, that's fine. Whatever. It's my husband.
we call it I agree with what you were saying about the condition. Some people like yourself that travel a lot and have to do that for their job. I did that too. 75 miles a day. And I'd have to go look for another job if I was doing that. Because it'd just be, the company is not going to pay me back because I live further away, you know. And there's no mass transit between here and Cheshire, as is true with a lot of people for wherever. The other thing is the intrusiveness, and what scares me about that is, you know, they're already talking down in Washington, the great minds. We're already talking about how they're going to put a monitor in your house to see how much electricity you use and charge you that way. I mean, what's next? You know, I'm looking forward, like you are, to the high mileage, but you know,
I would ask.
It's just one step further.
here we go. Where's the brown shirts? I'm sorry.
I would add too that the gasoline tax is a very good form of BMT tax. The more you drive, the more you pay. Regardless of time.
I agree.
And if you want to drive an SUV, you're paying more.
Now, what about on the all mileage thing? How are you going to get something like that for all the people who come from New York and travel from the state or any other places going through? And then you would lose that. Okay.
Anything else that wanted to make a comment?
If I could just add, there's something really democratic about this concept of the more you drive, the more you pay. Regardless, again, as I mentioned earlier, what kind of mileage the car is getting, even if it's getting into the market. Figure out some way of tapping into that without hopefully putting transponders around our necks. But there is also something regressive about a gas tax in the sense that a struggling mom is paying the same amount to use the roads as Bernie Madoff. So if you're gonna drill into Bernie Madoff's kids still running around. The fact is, we have people the income disparity in Fairfield County, all joking aside, is unbelievable. We have multi-billionaires living cheap to jowl with guys making $7 an hour. So if the idea is to tap into every single person and figure out what they're driving per mile and how much they're going to pay, you might as well take the next step and base it on the ability to pay. I mean, if you're going to, I'm simply saying that if the interesting thing about a gas tax, the way that it's set up right now is it's essentially payments. You go to the pump, you fill up your car, you pay your tax, you're done, you're gone. Now we're looking about getting bills, getting quarterly statements, maybe paying taxes having to do with your registration. You pull in the DMV once a year, maybe it'll be every 6 months. They look at your mileage, they figure out how much you've driven and how much your registration is going to pay. It really shifts the burden away from this sort of painless, almost invisible tax to something that's very upfront with the constituency that has to pay this. And I have to tell you something, because I represent them. They're going to be talking to me, and they're going to be talking, how come I have to pay? I'm a part-time college student. How come I got to pay as much as, and then I'll mention some, rock star, someone that's making $50 million a week. Is that inherently unfair when the entire rest of the Connecticut tax system is based on income, not based on per use? So I'm simply saying, be careful what you wish for. If you start to get into details, if your ability has gotten so good with computers, you can actually get that information.
You make some valid points. And that's the dilemma you have up at the state. When you have 151 of us that represent different constituencies, different parts of the state, and this is the dialogue we need.
That was a concern of mine when it was brought up at a more recent meeting. And I gave some thought, and I thought, well, the Madoffs of the world, or the hedge fund gurus of the world, probably have 3 cars, the wife, the husband, and each one of the kids probably. And they're probably driving bigger cars. I don't know whether that would equalize that or not, who's done a study. But whereas...
I'll stipulate that they pay more in everything, but the fact remains that they're paying the same amount per mile.
Hi, I'm going to come from behind the camera. It's rare when I do this, but I wanted to speak out about this because one of the things that really concerns me is transportation in this area. Border tolls, I think, is just ridiculous in this area. You just can't do something like that. It makes no sense to do something like that here in Danbury. As this map illustrates, there's so many ways to get around 84. And last year, I helped out in opposition to residents who lived on the Mill Plain Road area who opposed a hotel complex on Prindle Lane, which is kind of like right down the street. And what I did was they asked me to go videotape the traffic on Mill Plain Road to show to the Planning Commission. So I went out there from Monday through Friday between 4:30 to, let's say, 7 every single day just to see how the traffic was. I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable how much traffic goes up and down Mill Plain Road of people trying to just get off of 84 or try to escape the traffic there. If you put tolls on a 2-lane road on 84, I can't imagine the amount of traffic that would be backed up on roads such as on Hat and that whole area. It would just be devastating to that area. I think it's wrong. Now that being said, I'm not against tolls in general. I'm not for border tolls. As somebody who lived in Danbury for over 20 years, I can't tell you how many, and in fact, I lived right off of 84 for a number of years. I can't tell you how many times 84 has been paved over and over and over again. And we all know why. It's because so many tractor trailers go up and down 84 constantly. And what they do, they come down from Massachusetts, they go straight through Connecticut, straight to New York. And you're right, most of those trucks don't pay for gasoline in Connecticut. They might gas up in Massachusetts where it's cheaper. So they'll shoot right down 84, maybe down 95, and cruise right through New York, rip up our roads, and we got to pay for it, and those truckers are not paying anything for that. So in terms of that, maybe some type of toll system might be something might be good, but in terms of a border toll, Danbury, it's just not, it's not feasible. We're the 7th largest city in Connecticut. There's a lot of ways in and out of Danbury into New York. And if you do something like that, I'm telling you, there a lot of residents here will tell you without question, a lot of traffic will be diverted off of 84 into all these other roads. So it's just something really to consider. And I encourage you, come on down to, you can hang out at the Windmill Diner anytime you can. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Just see the traffic, it's pretty bad.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. When I first came up with this concept, and I was so thrilled that fellow leaders on the Transportation Committee were very willing to do this for the first time in Danbury, but our plan is to do it in other regions throughout the state of Connecticut because it's important. Border toll seems to be the focus about what is preliminarily being considered, certainly not the only thing that's being considered, but those are the areas that are definitely going to be impacted. I thank you all for coming out tonight, for sharing your thoughts and ideas and concerns. That's all what makes it a success. That's why we're here. I especially appreciate the community leaders that were here who have good knowledge about the history of what's involved and what's potentially impacted. I especially want to thank those that came from a far distance to be here to share their knowledge with you. Jill Kelly, Charlie Barone from DOT, certainly my friend and colleague Tony Guerrera, Chairman of Transportation, and Commissioner Marie from the department, who's been wonderful. What you saw tonight has been demonstrated over and over again.
Many times.
Yes. And you know, he's been out here a number of times to address various transportation concerns because he really cares about making a difference and improving various modes of transportation that are important to all of us here in the state. And so I want to thank Senator Boucher, also my friend and colleague, and representatives from the region, Senator McLaughlin, Representative Higler, and Representative Taversack, who were all here and cared enough to listen to your concerns and share their knowledge and expertise on the subject.